Okay, we're live, but we got to let it breathe. Hang tight, y'all. Hang tight. All right. We'll bring on Facebook and we'll get this bad boy rolling. Welcome in, everybody. It is the Mile High Huddle podcast. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, with me, my fellow football priest, co host, and hashtag partner in crime, Zack Kelberman. Zack, today for Broncos country, who's been, at their jobs or dealing with stuff at home or whatever, hasn't been on the news wire per se. A lot has happened. What would you say, first and foremost, is the biggest news of the day for Broncos country?
They're moving fast and furious to fill their head coaching vacancy, Chad. They've requested interviews with multiple candidates now, not named just Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh. They're going to speak with in-house DC Ejiro Evero this week, but they've also put in requests for Dan Quinn, the Cowboys DC, Raheem Morris, the Rams DC, and DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers DC. Some first-time names on there, some veteran names on there. I'd be surprised if they go for another defensive oriented coach. To me, it's a 3-horse race between Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, and Dan Quinn. So that's the latest on the coaching search.
I'm not sure exactly, Zack, how I feel about Dan Quinn. Like, to me, considering the caliber of coaches that are at this Walton Penner ownership group's fingertips, he ends up being kind of like a third or fourth place guy for me. But that's not to take anything away from Dan Quinn, because there's a lot to get excited about. In fact, it feels like we were here just yesterday, but it was a year ago when Dan Quinn became a bona fide candidate for the Broncos head coaching vacancy. It was Scott, Mr. Producer himself, that kind of swayed me on my view anyway, of Dan Quinn. And I think with the right offensive coordinator hire, the right QB coach hire, it could end up being a really good thing, pardon me, for Russell Wilson, for the Broncos team culture specifically. But where would you rank Dan Quinn on your list of preferred candidates?
Well, I do want a retread, so to speak. I do want an experienced guy. So to me, Dan Quinn has the edge over the DeMeco Ryans. Although DeMeco, I think, is going to be a really good coach when he gets his opportunity. I would put Quinn third. My big fish swing is still for Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton, and the Broncos could very well end up with one of those two. But I'm not going to cry like a lot of Broncos country would, based on what I've read on Twitter. They don't want Dan Quinn at all. Well, he's a culture establisher. He's a culture builder. He's a natural leader. He has experience. He's accomplished. And most importantly, Chad, he's familiar with Russell Wilson. That's a really important quality to have, and a quality that Greg Penner is looking for in his next head coach or OC. My only thing is, Chad, to go from an offensive mastermind like Sean Payton, or someone who's very ground and pound oriented and very pragmatic like Jim Harbaugh, to possibly Brian Schottenheimer, who would be reportedly the coordinator under Dan Quinn, that to me is underwhelming. So I wouldn't mind Dan Quinn necessarily as head coach, but the OC, the guy who's going to work closely with Russell Wilson, that's where it's not so sexy to me.
David McElrath, what's going on, big dog? Great to see you. Appreciate you being with us. He's saying, today starts the 2023 season, I think is what he's trying to say. I really hope we get Jim Harbaugh. I really enjoyed the Orange and Blue View with Thomas and Ron. That's right, bro. And hashtag MHH for life indeed. In case you guys missed it, when we say MHH is 7 nights a week, a podcast, that's officially back. We went 3 or 4 months with Saturdays not having a show after Zack and I relinquished Wednesdays and moved Mile High Insiders to Wednesdays. That left Saturday wide open. We filled it starting this past Saturday with the Orange and Blue View, which includes, as hosts, Thomas Hall and Ron White. They just scratched the surface. They were just getting started, but book it your Saturday nights. I know a lot of times, Zack, people are busy. They're doing things on Saturday nights, but at 6 p.m., for most people, you're still probably chilling. So turn it on, engage in that conversation, and help them continue to make it a great show. Mike, what's up, brother? Great to see you. Appreciate the support from this legendary Mount Rushmore Super Chat superstar. Always great to see you in the chat, Mike. And then Chris saying with the Super Chat, thank you, Chris. Zack and Chad, still the best in the biz. Much love and respect. We do appreciate you, big dog. What is it, Zack? Well, let's grab Silent One. Then I'll segue. Silent One, bro. So generous. Thank you. my friend. He says, with the truth coming out today about Greg Penner being forced into replacing the field, I'm nervous about this ownership group. Bolin would be ashamed. Reactionary ownership isn't good. What say you, Zach?
I don't think it's reactionary. I haven't seen that report about Penner being forced to replace the field. Forced by who? He's the owner of the team. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, Silent One, what you're saying here. I actually think it's very proactive of Greg Penner and the Broncos ownership for one game to show they're not going to, mess around. They're going to throw whatever money and resources they can to putting the best product on the field, and that includes the field itself. So I like the way the Broncos are going under Greg Penner. You want aggressive, but not reckless. You do want someone involved, but not a micromanager. And I don't think they have to worry about that with Greg Penner. We can't, Chad, even as analysts or fans, whoever, we can't want the Penner's money and the Waltons' money and not expect them to meddle a little bit. You can't have your cake and eat it too to that extent. They're going to be involved in the process, but as long as he keeps George Payton around, he knows where his bread is buttered, and he's going to handle the financials while the football people handle the football.
I had not heard that either, the thing about Penner and being forced. I'm doing a cursory glance over a couple of things to see if something pops out, but
apparently the NFL forced the Broncos. That's what Silent One's saying here. I haven't heard that, but
I hadn't either. Drop us a link if you can, my friend. What is it, Zach, about DeMeco Ryans? Why DeMeco Ryans? What is it that makes him an attractive head coach option? And even for a team like the Broncos, who we know would prefer to err on the side of experience here, meaning, what does that mean? Are you an experienced coach? Obviously, what they mean is someone who's been a head coach before.
Yeah, but the Penner and Payton press conference also made it clear they're not going to discount first timers altogether. They're going to cast a wide net, and wider than Payton cast last year. That was one of his regrets, not talking to more candidates. I can't say that I know the Niners intimately well, but based on the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, it's a very favorable system to be in when you want to establish your culture and your way of going about things. Beyond that, though, DeMeco's just churned out top 3 defenses the last couple of years, Chad, and they are pretty much the strength of the team. He gets people to buy into his system and his ways. He coaches at every level, from the front 7 to the defensive secondary, and the stats speak for themselves. They rank top 5 in most categories. I just think he's an up-and-coming riser and against the grain in a very offensive-minded league.
Maybe I'm still just a little traumatized, Zach, from Vance Joseph. I know this isn't his first year. This is his second year, right? Ryan's as coordinator, or is it?
But he was a Pro Bowl player too.
For
Vance
sure.
wasn't. That's what I like about
True, very true. I don't know. We'll circle back. Howie frickin' Day in the frickin' house, throwing down some frickin' stars. Appreciate you, big dog. He says, guys, we need this team to turn it around next year. How much are the Broncos willing to part ways with to get Sean Payton, and would it be worth it? Well, what's the last report, Zach, we saw over the weekend about what the Saints are going to ask? If you want to believe the initial reporting, even though the Saints granted Denver's request to interview Sean Payton, they have not had any baseline discussions on compensation. But, Zach, there have been reports, updated reports over the weekend of what the Saints ask is going to be, which I remember off the top of my head, including, obviously, a first-round pick. So, is that too steep of a price to pay, knowing that would not be that's the starting point, right? That's not all it would take to get the rights to Sean Payton.
That's probably the furthest I would go personally as a first-round pick. I mean, but you'd have to be absolutely 1,000% sure that Sean Payton is the guy for the job, and he's going to turn around Russell Wilson and this offense in short order. Interestingly, though, Pro Football Talk put out a report today. I want to read this little tidbit from it if I could. According to Mike Florio, quote, although the two teams have not yet officially agreed on compensation in the event Payton is hired, the Broncos and Saints have a loose understanding as to what it will take to do a deal, per source, close quote, Chad. And it makes me believe if the Broncos already have that understanding and they're still going on with the interview process and waiting a week or so on top of that, they must want Sean Payton a fair bit. A first-round pick, a 2/3, and a later round pick is what I heard last time. I also heard today that they want a high round pick. Let's call it a first rounder and a blue chip player. So a first rounder and let's say Simmons.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little too far for me.
Especially when Jim Harbaugh is attainable. Now, who knows? Maybe they have their interview with Jim Harbaugh and it doesn't go swimmingly. Maybe they don't vibe well with Jim, although I have a hard time believing that. I know he can be a little bit goofy. He can put some people off, but there are those connections, the Stanford thing with the Penners and his wife Carrie, and then of course Condoleezza Rice. So there is already, Zach, a base familiarity there, which makes it harder for me to believe that he's going to show up to a virtual interview and botch it or just not vibe with that collection. Phil, bro, thank you, big dog. It's great to see you. He says, I am not sold on Dan Quinn, but if he is the choice, would that mean Ejiro Evero would be gone? I want an offensive mind. Hashtag Go Broncos, MHH for life. Appreciate you, brother. Well, if he gets a head coaching job, Broncos can't block it. They allowed him. Wait, we know they requested the Texans, in case you missed it, put in a request. Did the Broncos approve it? We know for sure that.
I don't know yet. I know they've put in the request for it, but I'd be surprised if they declined it.
So my point simply being that he might be a head coach somewhere. I don't know if Houston's going to go that many coaches in a row of the defensive sort, head coach, being defensive minded, but especially when they've had such little success to speak of over those recent hires. But I don't know. What do you think? If all things being equal, I think any coach who assumes this job, if Evero is still under contract with the Broncos, would be a moron to not want that guy to stay. Hey, you do your thing. Dan Quinn's an expert on that side of the field,
right.
But hey, let's put our brains together and make this a great defense. Broncos were good this year. They weren't great, and a big reason for that, injury bug.
Yeah, you nailed it, Chad. I would hope that if Quinn was hired, they can keep Evero because Evero has a solid foundational scheme in place, but what Dan Quinn thrives in is takeaways and turnovers and creating havoc. 2 years in a row, for the first time since 1971 and 72, I believe, the Cowboys led the NFL in takeaways. 2 years in a row. It's the one thing the Broncos really struggled with under Ejiro Evero and Vic Fangio for that matter. But you're right that Evero could get a head coaching offer. I think he's about a year too soon on that, though. I think he needs another year to incubate in the Broncos system as DC, and then he'll get his shot. But if the Texans want him, I mean, Evero wants to be a head coach, and he'd be hard-pressed to turn down that job, even though the Texans, Chad, are where coaches go to die. They've had 4 since 2020 alone. I mean, so Evero has to weigh that with maybe building his resume a little more, but that's the dream team right there, getting one defensive expert in Dan Quinn and keeping another in Evero.
Scott brings up, the idea of Ejiro Evero interviewing, et cetera. He says that the Broncos or any NFL team, you can't block a hire if it's a promotion. But then I'm like, yeah, that sounds right. Wait a minute, though. Then I'm reminded, Scott, hear me out on this. 2015, Gary Kubiak takes over as head coach of the Denver Broncos. Who does he want as his defensive coordinator? Not first choice being Wade Phillips. No, first choice was secondary coach of the Bengals, Vance Joseph. Bengals blocked it, wouldn't allow it. And so then the second choice was Wade Phillips. It ended up being, of course, foreordained, Zach, and written in the stars that Wade Phillips was supposed to be that hire. But maybe there's something to do with bylaws and little the fine print, Zach, when it's a position coach. Maybe there's more control a team can exert over interviews and blocking this or that than it is, say, a coordinator interviewing for the next best thing, which is only a head coaching gig.
Well, there's also this to consider based on the new amended Rooney rules. If he's with the Broncos for 2 years, so he's already been with them for one, obviously. If he stays with them for 2023, Evero, and then gets a head coaching job, the Broncos would get 2 third-round picks in exchange for him leaving. So there is some upside to Evero sticking around. And if he does, working under Dan Quinn would be quite the setup to me.
I'm also hearing a little buzz, Zach, about Vic Fangio potentially garnering some interest out there as a head coaching candidate in this cycle. What have you heard on that front, if anything?
I have not seen that yet. Vic as a head coach, who's he been linked to?
Let me find this again. Stand by. I'll find it. But was it
Carolina would probably
Panthers
serve him
job?
well.
I
Yeah.
think it was the Panthers job. And that makes sense a little bit because he does have a history there as a former defensive coordinator for Carolina. I'm trying to remember
Good defense and no quarterback. Perfect for Vic.
True. I'll find it. When I find it, I'll circle back. Let's grab Daniel. Hey, Daniel, what's going on, big dog? Appreciate you being with us. He says, Denver Broncos for life, watching you guys in Houston. Heck yeah, brother. See, that's the thing. This is another example of Broncos country is not a geographic location. It's a state of being. It's wherever you are. Daniel, he's in Houston. Thanks for being with us, big dog. It's great to see you. Andrew Lampy, what's going on, brother? He says, evening, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing well. Zach, are you doing well?
I'm doing well, Chad. Black Monday came and went, and the Broncos are kicking off their coaching search, so couldn't be better.
I'm stoked to crack this bad boy open here in the next couple of days. Some dude that knows me well got me this for Christmas. His name rhymes with Schmelberman.
It's a good read.
Dope, dude. You have read this?
Yes. You'll like it. And Diamond Rattler, I know he's a Sopranos fan too. If you haven't read that yet, check it out for sure. Looks good on the bookshelf.
I was just telling Zach and Scott before we went live, pardon me, I took my family to see Avatar 2 last night, and then we're going to grab Clinton. Hang tight one sec. And was super stoked and surprised to see Carmela Soprano in the movie. What's her name? Edie Falco, right? Yeah. Edie Falco. So anyway, Clinton, bro, you are the man. Thank you for that very generous super chat. Connect with us on Twitter. He says, nothing but love for everyone here. Remember, the Jags blast you, nicknamed Jewel. Wait, remember the Jags. I need my
just another guy,
bro.
I believe.
Okay. Remember, just another guy blast you, nicknamed Jewel and Singleton. Josie looked pretty awesome in coverage. Did you see the gap wood he laid in the hole?
Pause.
Man, I tell you, sometimes my 14-year-old sense of humor just gets the best of me. You know what I'm saying? I think Jewel, honestly, they'd stacked some serious tackles. I mean, these guys almost combined for 300 tackles in 2022, which is impressive. But I'm not sure we've seen enough from either one of those guys, Zach, to definitively prove our take being wrong, that they aren't just a guy. They're really good as run tacklers. They swarm to the ball. Their run fits are good, all that. But in coverage, you can't even say almost. You know, they're often exploited. However, and this was something Thomas Hall wrote about over the weekend, a very interesting article. Go check it out, Clinton at milehighhuddle.com. On the subject of Alex Singleton, he's giving him mad props. He's saying, look, Broncos should consider re-signing him, kind of sketching out, well, what would that look like? What is he worth? And then looking at the statistical impact that he made last season, Zach, and relative to his age and all that stuff. And when you look at his stats, guess what? No high-impact plays. Very few. No is an absolute. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but I can't, so I'm not going to say no. Very few high-impact plays of the sort. I'm talking forced fumbles, fumble recoveries, picks, strip sacks, these type of things. Jewel, on the other hand, did have a few of those type of plays. So, and he's under contract this year, so you don't have to worry about Jewel. But what do you think of Alex Singleton?
Well, I think they're, like you laid out, they're elite as run stuffers, but they are middle of the pack, and that's being kind in pass coverage. And it's, more of the same from the Broncos, who haven't really had an inside linebacker that can win in coverage in years. Baron Browning was the closest thing. So as run defenders, first and second down inside linebackers, they're great. And Singleton was a nice surprise, kind of taking over Jonas Griffith's role. Josie Jewell looked a little better in coverage. He had some interceptions, but that was more to me of an outlier. Singleton's a UFA this coming off season. I would not be opposed to the Broncos bringing him back on a 1-year team-friendly deal, but they're never going to be what you need in the NFL on third down, and that's an inside linebacker that can hang with Travis Kelce, that can hang with Darren Waller, that can hang with the tight ends and the bigger receivers and running backs of the NFL.
Here's the props I'll give Singleton. I'll go a little above and beyond on this, okay? He finished the season with 163 combined tackles, 100 of which were solo. That included, Zach, 6 tackles for a loss, and 3 quarterback hits. Nary a fumble recovery or forced fumble, nary an interception to be found. Okay. Actually, he did have one. He had one forced fumble, so I bite my tongue. He broke up 3 passes. So he had one impact play outside of the tackles. I don't want to make it sound like soloing up and tackling a dude in the open field is not a high impact. I mean, game-changing play. One forced fumble. But get this, Zach. Remember, he started this season as the number 3 guy. He only started 12 games. Can you imagine the tackle production this dude would have had if he was a day 1 starter? I mean, dude was an animal. I'll give him that. He outkicked his coverage. I'm still not sure, though. I saw enough to say it's anything more than an outlier to move me off kind of an average linebacker. All things considered, really good run defender. All things considered, though, you take the full package, kind of a jag. I'm optimistic, though, and that's why I'd be down for the Broncos to bring him back, depending on the money.
What's the record for tackles in an NFL season? Because you're right, he probably would flirt with that if he played a full 16-game schedule. Yeah, great on early downs, great run defender, but I question how many of those tackles that you mentioned came 5-7 yards past the line of scrimmage. It's easy to accumulate tackles. He only had 6 behind the line, though. So he is.
So I'll tell you real quick. They don't track combined, at least in the record books. Okay, but for solo tackles all time, single season, Ray Lewis has the most from 97. He had 156. Patrick Willis had 136 solo tackles in 2007. Ray Lewis holds the 3rd spot with 130. I'm just going to give you the top 5. How do you pronounce this dude's name? I always screw it up, dude. Foyesade Olukun from Jacksonville. 128 solo tackles this season, Zach, which puts him in top 5. He's number 4, tied with Jonathan Vilma from 2005 as a Jet, former first-round pick of theirs. So 100 solos, still very impressive. Far cry from what it would take to crack even, I'm looking at it, to crack even the top 70, top 90, to crack the top 90, Zach, for what it's worth.
If anything, give George Payton credit for identifying Singleton as a player who can come in and thrive in Evero's defense. And that's why you want to keep George Payton around. His eye for talent, the players that you never really heard of that can contribute during the course of a season, that's where he really thrives.
So let's check this out real quick. I don't want to flog this horse to death, but Scott did a good job chasing down some scratch and sniff stuff. By the way, Unique Prepping, we know who this is. Smouse is in the house, dude. Checking in with the super chat just to be supportive. MHH for life. Love you, big dog. Great to see you still doing your thing, creating your content on the interwebs. Hang tight 1 sec, Mark. I'm just going to show this real quick. Scott, thank you very much for tracking this down. So this is the most combined tackles in a season. All right. There's your record right there, 192. That was not this season, but the season before. And then he turned in the 2nd most prolific combined. So he owns 1 and 2. Jordan Brooks from Seattle in 2021 has 184. Where's our guy? Why am I not seeing him here? Hold on. Am I going blind? Alex Singleton, 163 combined. Uh-oh. I think it might be freezing up on me. Hang tight 1 sec, guys. Hang tight 1 sec. Okay, I'm back. Singleton. I don't see him on this list. Why? Oh, there he is. 22, Singleton, 163. Okay. So give him his props. He did have a very prolific, Zach, very prolific season as a tackler for the Denver Broncos, and I'll give the man his props.
Yeah, he was on a $1.15 million contract. That's peanuts for a guy who's going to have over 100 combined tackles and can really help you in run defense. So another good find by George Payton.
Okay, who did we have waiting on us there? Mark. Thank you, bud. Appreciate you being with us. He says, hey, guys, go Broncos. Just joined the broadcast, so sorry if you've already covered this, but who called plays yesterday? A really good game plan and play calling. Thanks. In fact, we just posted a clip of us discussing this on Mile High Huddle, TikTok, Instagram, and I think a short that just went up. But yeah, it was Justin Outen, the offensive coordinator hire that Nathaniel Hackett made and then passed over when he decided to relinquish play calling duties. He gave it to the quarterback's coach, Clint Kubiak. So it was Outen, for what it's worth, Zach, and then I want to serve this back to you, who called plays in the last 2 games post Hackett being fired, and the offense looking, night and day improved.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Justin Outen. I definitely think that he's called 2 good games in a row and playing to Russ's strengths. But by doing so, Chad, he's not reinventing the wheel. He's just calling smart, common sense plays for your quarterback and figuring out what that quarterback can do and can't do. But I've been impressed by just exploiting Russ and exploiting the offense. And it's no surprise, no coincidence. Russ had 3 TDs yesterday. Latavius Murray went over 100 yards. That's what you do when you have a play caller who knows what he's doing. And to Outen's credit, he looks a lot better than Clint Kubiak, who was the only guy who actually had play calling experience on staff, and the guy that Hackett, Outen's former boy, I guess, handpicked over him. So credit to Outen, but that just shows how incompetent and how ill-matched Hackett was for the Broncos offense, and how he couldn't even call a series of plays that can, help your quarterback out. Russ might be 34, Chad, but the across his body, rolling to the left, dime to Jerry Jeudy, not a lot of quarterbacks can make that throw, and kudos to Outen for dialing it up.
Indeed, and the implications are even worse if you take, what Scott, he's of the opinion that Nathaniel Hackett didn't choose to give play calling duties to Kubiak. That was the front office saying, no, here's who you're going to give it to. That makes the implication even worse, that it could have been anyway, George Payton, who passed over Justin Outen when what we saw over the last 2 weeks. Sam Bam, brother, legendary figure. We love you. You're a Mount Rushmore Super Chat superstar, near and dear to our hearts. He says, good evening, Chad and Zach. Should be a fun-filled January with lots of head coach rumors. At what point do you think the Broncos will have hired their new head coach? January 30th, go Broncos. Love you, big dog. January, from now until draft day, is my favorite period, my favorite stretch on the NFL calendar for a reason. But on this subject, guys, very interesting article that Eric Trickle published today. Go give it a read, milehighhuddle.com. Breaking down, kind of projecting the timeline here for hiring and installing that next head coach. And I'll give you one little spoiler, and that is a reminder that Nathaniel Hackett was announced as the new head coach of the Denver Broncos January 27th, 2022. Now, that was, Zach, after an exhaustive search where the Broncos had to wait for coaches who were coaching in the playoffs, NFL mandated rules, this and that. And it was also 10 different coaches that they interviewed with, only one of which, if I remember right off the top of my head, was virtual. Everything else, they traveled to them and took the time. So you need those calendar days, right? You need those days on the calendar to get that stuff done. I doubt they interviewed 10 guys this time. I have a feeling, Zach, that it's a little bit more of a focused list, and they're just going to spend more time with the names on that focused list. But what do you think? Because I'm not thinking it's going to take all the way till the end of the month. It could, like in the case of Hackett, but I have a feeling it's going to be sometime next week. I could be wrong, but they get to talk with Sean Payton in person as of January 17th.
Yeah, I was doing the research while you were talking, and Hackett was the 27th. Vic Fangio was January 9th. FYI, obviously today's January 9th, so no hiring is going to be announced. They're going to go through
But for what it's worth, that was before the 17-game season.
Right.
And so that, move that 1 week forward, and it's basically the same as, almost nearly anyway, as Hackett.
Sure, forget what I said. But they're going to go through the first round of interviews, obviously. And you're right, Chad. They have their focus list right now. I think like 6 people are on that, and they might add one more to that list. But who's on there right now is who they're going to go after. And they probably know that among those 6, let's say, there's only 3 real candidates that they really want. That would be Jim Harbaugh, Sean Payton, Dan Quinn. But they'll probably get one of those 3. And I have a feeling they're going to be done with the interviews by the time that Payton interview rolls around. So he'll be the last one, and then they'll decide from there. I'm with you. It might not be next week, but it won't be as late as Hackett was. So I'll say like the 20th, 21st, sometime in that time range.
So you just named 3 that we know for sure. For those who might have been joining us midstream, who else do we know is on the Broncos list that they've requested interviews?
Well, Evero is going to interview in-house. That's a formality. Also, Raheem Morris, the Rams DC, and DeMeco Ryans, the 49ers DC. That's on the list right now.
No word yet on Shane Steichen. No word yet on, say, Ken Dorsey so far, right? Or a Frank Reich. Some of the names people might be familiar with. Right now, it's these 6 names. Victor's Gaming jumping in. Thank you, bro, for the kind words. He says, hey, Chad and Zach, I've been watching you guys for a while now. I love the pod.
Thank you.
You're a prince. And you have exquisite taste, let us just say. Do you guys think George Payton will finally draft a right tackle?
Please. It's got to be the year, right, Victor? It really has to. They can't neglect that any longer. They saw what happens when Russell Wilson does not have time. It's not pretty. And when he does have time, like yesterday, or even when he didn't have time yesterday, he was making plays, but there's still some there. And if you protect Russ, number one, first and foremost, that's how you maximize the contract that you gave him. That's how you maximize a 34-year-old quarterback. So if it was up to me, if I'm George Payton, Greg Penn, or Rob Walton, I am putting every resource I have into upgrading the O-line with at least 3 new starters.
Sharing a brain here. I saw this from Mike, and I said to Scott, keep an eye out for Mike, and then boom, as I'm like hitting enter on the DM that you guys don't see, he appears. Mike, thank you, brother, for the very generous stars on Facebook. He says, I missed the live last night. It was great to see competent football. Woof, what a year. Hope we get this hire right. Mike, hey, sorry that you missed us last night. We're just stoked that you're here today. And it was nice to see competent football. Zach, is there any part of you that wonders if the Broncos still win yesterday's game, if they get the full measure of LA's best shot, meaning no starters are pulled in respect to protecting them for the playoffs?
If the game would have been different,
the outcome. Do the Broncos still win if they don't end up resting so many starters in the fourth?
I think so, because the Broncos got pretty much the full shot in the first half, and you know they were not without fault, but they still were up for the game. And that's been the thing with the Broncos is how motivated can they get on any given week? How into the game are they going to be? And Jerry Rossberg, to his credit, had the Broncos up for 2 games, 2 divisional opponents, and they almost upset Kansas City on top of that. So I do think they would still win that game, but it was encouraging that to go out with a bang in the finale at home, all the players, rallied and made it happen. Russ had one of his best games of the year.
Loved seeing that. I also loved seeing him actually answer the question, is Russell Wilson fixable? Like, he actually addressed that. There's a clip of it up currently on our YouTube channel. It's running on a lot of the articles that you maybe have read today at milehighhuddle.com. Interesting, some of his remarks. He's like, yeah, I've asked myself that. I was like, I don't know if I'd maybe admit that, Russ, off the podium. Anyway, Mike, you're a prince. Appreciate you, big dog. Good to see you. Lady D in the house. We love you. We appreciate you. So generous. Top rope super chat. She ended up on the MHH 2022 Mount Rushmore for Superstars. And what's crazy about that is, Zach, she came in, I'll say, I don't remember exactly when I recall her exactly entering the chat, okay, and being a part of our conversations and community, but I want to say it was like the last quarter of the calendar year, and yet she still ends up on the Mount Rushmore list. So love you, Deanna. She says, evening, priest, I'm hoping Ejiro Evero stays, but I will be surprised if he does. I'm also hoping the next head coach is either Jim Harbaugh or Sean Payton. Dan Quinn, meh. Just please make sure the O-line is fixed. Have a great night. MHH for life. Love it. Yeah. Evero, I'll the only thing I'll kind of disagree with you on a little bit here, Lady D, is this. I'm not convinced Evero is going to get a head coaching gig this time around. Thus, I would be surprised if he did leave. All right. Not shocked, but I would be a little bit surprised just because, it's one thing, Zach, to be a first-time defensive coordinator and kind of exceed expectations on a team that failed to make the playoffs. He ended up posting some pretty elite numbers in the red zone and a few other things as a defense. But if he would have coordinated a defense of that similar caliber, Zach, on a team that made the playoffs, it would, to me, increase his odds of getting a hire by like twofold. But because it was a losing cause, he'll get some looks. His profile will be elevated. And I'm not saying it's not going to happen. I remain open to anything and all things when it comes to the NFL rumor mill and coaching hiring cycles. But I think, as Zach mentioned earlier in tonight's podcast, he's 1 year removed from really being able to like command some serious attention from more than just one NFL team.
I think he's where DeMeco Ryans was last year. Definitely a riser, up and comer. You see a future head coach in him potentially, but he's just still a little green, and he needs more of a incubation time as an assistant coach. But it'd be good for the Broncos if he wants to stick around, because again, if you have Jim Harbaugh, let's say, and they have some history as well, because Evero was on Harbaugh's staff in San Francisco. That's landing your big fish head coach while retaining a head coaching candidate in Evero as your DC. I mean, that's the best case scenario to me.
Mike bringing up some news from today. Article coming soon at the website at milehuddle.com. But for now, yes, indeed, the Broncos announced that they had signed 9 players to futures contracts. I will list them for you now. Signed to a future contract were wide receiver Victor Bolden. He's a third-year player out of Oregon State. 5'8" guy, so maybe some returner potential there. We'll see. Offensive guard out of Air Force, Parker Ferguson. He's got a year under his belt. Fionn Hicks, a Broncos draft pick from last year, cornerback out of Wisconsin. Delonte Hood, another corner out of Peru State. He's a rookie as well. Devin Key, defensive back. 1 year under his belt, Western Kentucky. Tyreek McAllister saw some action, or at least he spent a lot of time at the Broncos this year, mostly on the practice squad. Running back. Wyatt Ray, also some practice squad action, outside linebacker. Offensive tackle, Zach Hunter Thedford, a 6'6" dude with a year experience out of Utah. And then linebacker Ray Wilborn out of Ball State. So that's the 9 names signed to future contracts announced today.
Championship.
Let's go. Let's go. Lawrence, big dog. He says, so I've been looking, and all these young quarterbacks are getting quarterback coaches like Tom House. Like Tom House should give him a call. I heard he's worked with many, including Tom Brady. What say you, Zach?
Well, Russ has his guy in Jake Heaps. I don't know if he's going to stick around. Russ did admit a couple weeks ago he's going to look inwardly to the things he can change about his preparation in the offseason. I don't know if that just means diet and exercising, but it also could be a change in his personal quarterback coach. But I don't know how much difference those guys make. I feel like a lot of players like Rodgers and Brady like having their guy just for the sake of having their guy around. I'd rather Russ work with the quarterback coach, whoever it's going to be on the Broncos staff. And here's an off-the-wall idea. If a new coach comes in, Payton, Harbaugh, they're going to want their own guy at OC. That leaves Justin Outten on the outside looking in, no pun intended. Would you bring him back as maybe quarterbacks coach to keep him around Russell Wilson?
Maybe. I'd be open to it after what I've seen. His two games that he's coached. But Tom House, for what it's worth, I think you would have to make him a very lucrative offer to bring him out of being a private kind of individual position coach that quarterbacks like Tom Brady, Andrew Luck, Drew Brees that have worked with in the offseason to being on staff of a team, because he collects and stacks some Benjamins doing that private one-on-one with players. Phil, how would you guys rank? 1, Ben Johnson. 2, Shane Steichen. 3, Frank Reich. So that collection, Zach, how would you rank them?
Ooh, man, I'm tempted to just say that you have the order already there, Phil, and Johnson, Steichen, and Reich. My thing with Steichen, I feel more comfortable about him. I kind of feel like Ben Johnson is another Nathaniel Hackett, a young play caller who kind of had a flash in the pan year and is going to capitalize off of it. But if you can make lemonade, and they made a lot of lemonade in Detroit with Jared Goff, and the sequence of his play calling, the trick plays, when to call him to move the ball like he did in Detroit with that talent level or lack thereof was impressive. Steichen seems more of a I don't know, an all-around head coach, a leader. But then again, is it really hard to make lemonade in Philadelphia when you have Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Miles Sanders, Dallas Goedert, a lot of talent there. Frank Reich would be the high floor guy among this list, where you know what you're going to get in him. It might be another Jeff Fisher situation. You might be treading water at 9-8, but a lot of people would settle for 9-8 right now. He had success in Indy, no matter the quarterback, a lot of static he overcame as well. So I would not be disappointed, but it's a fall off when you're talking about Sean Payton, Jim Harbaugh, to then be talking about Frank Reich or Ben Johnson.
For what it's worth, Dan Campbell, this is a guy doesn't hand out compliments, less in his opinion they're hard-earned. He said Ben Johnson is, quote, worthy of a head coaching opportunity in the NFL. So, but I'm inclined, look, here's the problem. We're in this posture now, Zach, where we've been traumatized by taking a swing on a young, first-time offensive-minded head coach that has some kind of an association with a NFL superstar quarterback. And it's going to be hard to overcome that. You know, but to fully break free of that, we can't get too caught up rocking back and forth in the corner, sucking our thumb over the nightmares that Nathaniel Hackett gave us. So as much as I would like to say I'm open to the idea of a Ben Johnson or even a Shane Steichen's got a little bit more of a pedigree, I'm going to pass this time around. I'm going with bona fide experience. Give me a guy who's, even if you haven't been to the top of the mountain, have you sniffed it? Have you gotten close? Jim Harbaugh's a guy that has gotten dang close. RD, bro, another proof right here before us. Broncos country, not a geographic location. It's a state of being. Up there north of the 49th parallel in Canada, RD says, you think the Cardinals opening might cost us, Sean Payton, Zach? They have a raw, skillful quarterback with lots of potential that needs lots of coaching.
That was the scuttlebutt a couple weeks ago that Sean Payton had his eye on the LA job with Herbert or the Arizona job with Kyler Murray. And to little surprise, the Cardinals cleaned house today, Chad. Steve Keim as GM, gone. Cliff Kingsbury, head coach, gone. And I saw you, Savage Boy Kev, in the comments trying to troll me, get me riled up. No, I do not want Cliff Kingsbury as head coach, as OC. He is a choker at the highest level. I want nothing to do with him. But Sean Payton wants power. And he would get that in Arizona under Michael Bidwell. He can be the head coach. He can pick the groceries as GM. So not going to overreact, but the developments today were not good in the Broncos sweepstakes of landing Sean Payton.
Agreed. And by the way, for what it's worth, I think it's past time for that franchise to create a change at GM. Steve Keim had his day in the sun, you know, he's had these flashes of success, but it just never lasts. And then he also have the indignity and shame as a franchise of your GM getting a Dewey. You know, the Broncos experienced something similar with Matt Russell getting a DUI. But he wasn't the GM. Right? He wasn't like the man. That would have been John Elway. John Elway was at least smart enough to get Ubers, right? Let's face it.
Good for Colby. You, bud.
Good for you, bud. Always hopping in passenger side, though. Give the man his credit, right, dude. He's, you know, he thinks ahead a little bit. Colby, thank you for the stars, dude. So generous of you, my friend. Some big boy stars. He says, can we get a meaningful game at the end of next year? Can and will are two different things. Could we? Yes. Will we? ... remains to be seen. All I can tell you for now, Colby, is all will be known in due time.
You know, you mentioned the word traumatized, and I know we're all traumatized by the Broncos being on primetime so often under Hackett, but if they hire Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh, guess what's going to happen with the Broncos next year? They're going to get some primetime games on that basis alone. But Chad said it best. Can they? Absolutely, they can. Will they? We don't know that. And I'm a little traumatized, Chad, from any sort of prediction on the Broncos after what happened this past season.
I know, between our 2020 excitement and Vic Fangio's swan song season, and then this year, it's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go out on too long of a limb here. George, brother, thank you for the stars. He says, sorry, Zach, I'm not a fan of Dan Quinn. I'm more looking at the Philly OC, who is Shane Steichen. Denver Broncos for life, MHH for life. Appreciate that, George. My question to you would be why? Why not Dan Quinn? And I understand I was kind of a little bit ambivalent on the Quinn topic a year ago, but doing further research on him and learning more about this man, you can't base your perception or opinion of Dan Quinn, Zach, in my estimation, solely on how he ended up flaming out after that unfortunate Super Bowl collapse with the Patriots as the Falcons head coach. Because, he captured some lightning in a bottle by making a really smart hire at OC. And then Shanahan, after that Super Bowl year, leaves, goes to San Francisco. And then he just couldn't quite get that next OC hire right to sustain that momentum offensively with Matt Ryan and that collection of talent. But what you learn about Dan Quinn is he's a player's coach, but also a player's coach that it's not just, hey, Nathaniel Hackett, yo, what's up, bro? Hug him up. How you been? How's mom? But also a guy that can drop the hammer. In other words, the players perceive him as a bona fide authority figure. They give him that respect, and he creates culture, really good culture. That's something you can't take away from Dan Quinn. So if Zach, was chicken comboed into this position with a really smart OC hire to get the most out of Russ, I could live with it. Although with the other names that are currently out there, I would be scratching my head a little bit on, well, why not Harbaugh or why not Sean Payton? Although Sean Payton already comes with a few built-in obvious excuses or obstacles to getting him in Denver.
It's such an important point you made about being a player's coach, because there's different levels to it. There's employing a club med environment like a Herm Edwards or a Hackett, or there's being a player's coach but still kicking a player's ass when they need it. And I guarantee you under Dan Quinn that Melvin Gordon's situation would not have gone down the same way. Really quickly, though, while we're on the topic, I want to say it shouldn't matter. Nothing against you, George, or any member of Broncos country, myself included. It doesn't really matter who we want, who the fans want. It's who Greg Penner, George Payton, and the Broncos ownership wants and who they think is best for the team. Garrett Bowles, I think, Chad, said it today best in his media availability the last of the season. Unfortunately, he wanted to see discipline and accountability as principles from the new coach. Quote, someone who can come in and steer the ship. Quote, we need a tough guy. That's either Dan Quinn or Jim Harbaugh to me.
Yeah. Well, but even Sean Payton, let us not forget, this dude, he's a little bit of a gangster, all right? I don't think he blinks at dropping the hammer either. This is, after all, the head coach who sanctioned Bountygate. Albert, bro, love you. Great member of our community, a legendary figure. The lore surrounding this man, we love him. We love you. Give our best to Michelle. He says, yesterday's game was proof that Russ isn't one that needed to be fixed, but the scheme needed an update. Zach, my name's Rufus. That's the Trufus.
I believe they were averaging like 6 or 7 points higher since Hackett was fired, under Justin Allen and with Russell Wilson, and playing two good teams in the Chiefs and the Chargers, divisional opponents. It's true. And that's what I said yesterday. Pass it on. It wasn't a Russ problem. It was a Hackett problem. Was Russ part of it? Absolutely. A lot of people were complicit, but the biggest cancerous tumor that was plaguing the 2022 Broncos was Hackett. And it's become clear now. And now that he's cut out, hopefully that tumor does not metastasize any further.
And making matters worse, that tumor, the Hackett tumor, when they excised it and then did one of those biopsies, it was the kind that had a tooth in it too. So gnarly. All right, get it out of here. Claude, what's up, dude? Love you, bro. Seriously, throwing down some big boy stars on Facebook. Been with us a long time. We appreciate you, my dog. Go Broncos indeed.
I was wrong real quick, by the way, Chad. K-Hop, 27.5 under Justin Allen since Nathaniel Hackett was fired, and only 16.5, which is ridiculous. That's child's play under Nathaniel Hackett. And again, if you haven't seen the throw that Russell Wilson made across his body, I heard, by the way, we were told that Russell Wilson could not throw to his left. Well, he threw a dime with the protection breaking down to Jerry Jeudy. You could not have handed the ball to Jeudy any better than Russ made that throw. Let me tell you something, Chad. Washed quarterbacks don't make that throw. Washed quarterbacks don't even think of making that throw. He is
Careful.
not washed.
You might get a tweet from Gary Myers, all right, on this subject. He might pull your card on this. I jest. This is an inside joke. This is an inside joke. Just forget what I said. Ben Wallman, brother, what's up on Facebook? Great to see you. Thanks for the stars. He says, we need to sign a center and right tackle in free agency and draft a left guard. Hashtag get Harbaugh. Yeah, I was optimistic, and there was a palpable improvement at center when Cushenberry went down, and they were like, okay, Glasgow, you're our center now. But too many lapses, man. Too many lapses. And for Graham, it was mostly in pass pro. I don't think he did a bad job as far as like the pre-snap stuff, but just getting beat one-on-one, and it's not easy as an offensive lineman. I mean, I can't imagine, Zach, going backwards and trying to keep an animal like Chris Jones, right, from having his way and getting to the quarterback. But center has to be upgraded one way or another. There's a little bit of hope and potential upside in Luke Wattenberg, who the Broncos invested in the draft. They got him some playing time this year. He's still very raw, needs some time. Can't bank on him being your center next year. So, yeah, you need 3 significant upgrades, if you can, on the offensive line this offseason. Patriot Tech says Harbaugh or bust. Don't want anyone else, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the line of thinking, Patriot. It's either Harbaugh or bust or Payton or bust, and in a smaller minority, Quinn or bust. But in terms of the center, Chad, they're just getting beat. Every lineman gets beat. It happens every game, even the best of them, but there's getting dominated. And far too often, Cushenberry and Glasgow and Reisner were dominated, and it comes out on the film. So they need to replace them wholesale. The new starter at center, new starter at left guard, new starter at right tackle. I want a brand new O-line in 2023.
Jonathan Ward, what's up, brother? Appreciate the super chat. He says, guys, I'm living in Missouri. You can spit and hit a Chiefs fan. I believe that. Their focus needs to be the Broncos. First, coach. Second, all these injuries. And third, being competitive in the division. And let's just once, please pray, beat the Chiefs. Well, all those dominoes fall in your favor, Jonathan, if you get the first one right. Pardon me. You get the right head coach. If you get the head coach hire right, okay, he goes, yeah, this strength and conditioning, no, we're going to go ahead and do an update on that. All right, hopefully that helps at least mitigate the avalanche of injuries of late, the epidemic. And then obviously that would be a tide raising all the ships, being competitive in the division. Hey, there's been a lot of things I didn't see coming, Zach. So all bets are off when it comes to this weird funk the Broncos have been in post Super Bowl 50. But I have a hard time seeing Jim Harbaugh going 1-5 in a division, period, end of story, as a head coach. I could maybe see it from Sean Payton just because New Orleans had some weird seasons, bro, where had all the horses and they just failed to perform, including a Hall of Fame quarterback, Drew Brees. I still love him as a 1B. So for me, it's Harbaugh 1A, Sean Payton 1B.
Can we start with beating the Raiders and then go from there? We'll work our way to Kansas City because the Broncos have a lot of bad streaks that they're currently embroiled in that coaching would probably solve. And we saw it under Rosberg, how much more competent they've looked and the difference that coaching makes. It's not just a t-shirt or a slogan or a cliche, but coaching. So if you get that guy, if you bring in Peyton, you bring in Harbaugh, I'm with you. I feel confident they're not going to go 1-5. I feel confident they're going to snap that streak eventually against Las Vegas and Kansas City.
Andrew Baker, what's up, dude? Good to see you. Long-time member of our community. We got a chance to meet him, not this last MHH meet and greet, but the one prior. We've missed you, big dog. Hope you're doing well. He says, it's been a minute, but I hope this 7-year Elway Soul, I hope this 7-year Elway Soul sold should be paid by now. LOL, MHH for life. In other words, Elway sold the team's soul for a 7-year stretch to bring home the Lombardi in Super Bowl 50. Hopefully that, the price, maybe the VIG finally, Zach, has been paid off to bring back some Sopranos jargon.
Either that or the devil cut the Bobby Bonilla deal where it goes for like 70 years and you're never going to pay it off. But
$1 million a year. I'll take that.
Yeah, we'll find out soon enough, I guess.
Ben Wallman, and we're about out of time, guys, so get it in the chat. We still have a chance to get to it. He says, does Ben, what games did you guys go to this year? Which ones are you looking forward to being at in 23? Well, what do we know in 23, Zach? Right now, nothing other than the divisional games, right?
No, the schedule was really. We don't know like when it's going to take place yet.
Right.
I can pull
That's
it up
what I
real
mean.
quick.
But yeah, pull it up, and I'll tell you. We did the meet and greet, Ben, in week 3. So, and we're going to do another one. That was the Niners game. We're going to do it again in 2023. So stay tuned for that. Hope to see you there. What do you see, Zach?
I got the opponents. Yeah, this is the home schedule for the Broncos. Again, in May or April, whenever the schedule comes out, we'll know when the games are. But at home, the Broncos drew the Patriots, the Jets, the Packers, Vikings, Browns, Commanders, Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders. Away, the Bears, Lions, Dolphins, Bills, Texans, Chargers, Chiefs, and Raiders. Not overly terrible, I'd say, Chad.
There's some serious heavyweights on that list, though, on both away and home, outside of division. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a minute to answer you fully, my friend. Luke Ellis, though, appreciate your super chat and just how consistent you've been the last little bit. Luke, you're a prince. We really appreciate it. He says, would be thrilled to have Sean Payton or Harbaugh lead the Broncos. Will they be as thrilled to join the Broncos, though, with other options that are on the table? Oh, well. Help is the next priority, draft and free agency. He's saying, hoping so on the coaching thing. I'll give you a line from the great Mark Jensen, okay? Shout out to the old man. And that is, nothing rings the bell like money. So when you're Jim Harbaugh and you're Sean Payton and you are in a position where you can be a chooser, what really swings it is the financial compensation package for yourself. And then, Zach, if you combine that with, oh my gosh, yeah, I saw more than just signs of life from this offense and Russell Wilson in the final couple of games when they got their coaching you-know-what together. You add that up, I don't think they're going to be all that torn, I guess is what I'm getting at here, Luke. When push comes to shove and the bottom line must be met, they say, pay me.
Yeah, your dad's a very wise man, Chad. I can verify that for myself. And, my grandma, may she rest in peace, she had a similar line that she would tell me. Most things in life, all it takes is money. It really does solve a lot of problems if you have the money, and the Broncos definitely do. There is a line of thought out there that Jim Harbaugh is once again using NFL interest to leverage against Michigan to get a bigger payday. But here's the headline. Unlike last year, the Broncos can easily outbid whatever Michigan offers Jim Harbaugh. And when you're presented with $20 million. I mean, type that number out. See the zeros in 20 million. When you're offered that to come coach an NFL team, it's tough to turn it down. At least in my opinion.
When after taxes, your contract with the Broncos would still be more than your gross salary with the Wolverines. I'm listening. Hey, Mr. Penner, yeah, I'll take that interview. Ben says, let's not forget, fire Lauren Landau and staff. It's time for a change. All right. I'm not going to get too caught up in the whole media thing of I hate to advocate for someone to lose their job, but what's the NFL? Production-based business. Has this man produced, or what has his production been as this team's strength and conditioning coach? Well, go read the very illuminating, dare I say, edifying Eric Trickle article on this subject. Just Google Eric Trickle, Denver Broncos, strength and conditioning, and you'll find it. It's time for a change. Gina says, just want to say, I hope those Denver scouts, Zach, take a look at San Diego State for potential NFL draft prospects. Go, she says, San Diego State, NCAA FCS champs.
I'm reminded of the late Ronnie Hillman. Didn't he go to San Diego State? Wasn't he an alum? Yeah, there's definitely talent there, but
Aztec.
Just another depressing story now with Peyton Hillis in ICU still, Chad. His
Dude, what's the story on that? I know he was saving his children from drowning, but what is the actual context? What do we know happened?
He jumped into the water to save him, and his lungs and kidneys were of grave concern. So I'm speculating here that he was underwater for an extended period.
Well, he probably had to be resuscitated.
Yeah, he remains in pretty bad shape. So anyone out there who's, who prays, I would say a few for Peyton Hillis. He's a hero.
Yeah, prayers up for Peyton Hillis. legendary Broncos figure for real. Like he had, for a guy whose stay in Denver was relatively brief in his role, he ended up having like not quite Tebow-esque hype surrounding him in Broncos country, but even when he landed in Cleveland, my dude got Madden. So he's a legend. He's a legend. Mike, appreciate you, brother. With that, guys, we're gonna go ahead and dip out for tonight. Much love. We got a few things we got to tell you though, so hang tight.
Yeah, apparently Gina meant South Dakota State University. So
okay. All right. Okay. We'll do some examining. Gina, circle back with the draft dudes on that. Okay. We're talking Nick, Scott, we're talking Eric, we're talking Lance. Those guys are gonna know some names on those rosters.
yeah, and K-Hop says about Peyton Hillis, I heard that he was breathing out water and salt. So again, if you pray, I would say a few because he's a hero, saved his children, and he's not gotten nearly amount of the press and the headlines as other people. But that was the Mile High Huddle podcast. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at the MHH Pod, the main account on Twitter at Mile High Huddle. Chad at Chad and Jensen, myself at Kelberman NFL, and Scott at Scout Kennedy. If you guys want some merch like we're rocking right now, go to huddleuppod.com and be sure you check it out. And if you haven't, go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod, like that page and follow that page. Guys and gals, if you haven't, go to Apple Podcasts and leave your football priest a 5-star review for a chance to win some of that sweet, sweet merch each and every month. But if you can't do those things, please, guys, please subscribe, like, and share this video and every video you see on the MHH channel. It really helps us grow and reach more Broncos fans just like you.
Amen. Shout out to these great Super Chat superstars tonight, throwing down to support the MHH pod. David McElrath, Chris Chance's Silent One, Clinton Watson, Smouse in the House, Unique Prepping. Check out his channel. Sam Bam, Victor's Gaming, Lady D, RD, Patriot Tex, Jonathan Ward, Luke Ellis, and then our great supporters on Facebook tonight, starting with at the tippity top, Claude Riley, throwing down. Same with Michael Ronquillo, Phil McLaughlin, and Mike Likens, all throwing down some big boy stars. Howie as well, Andrew Lampy, yes, Ben Wallman, Colby C. Collier, Gina Cooper, Daniel Vasquez, George Fox, and Lawrence Rivera. Much love and respect. Can't wait to talk with y'all when we see you on Thursday night, Zach and I, this week, and Lawrence Rivera. I mentioned Lawrence. Who knows what water will have passed under the bridge for us to talk about. So happening times. It's an exciting period on the NFL calendar. We can't wait to continue talking about it, analyzing it with y'all.
And buckle up. I think it's about to get wild. But have a great start to your week, guys. We'll see you Thursday night. Take care. And as always, go Broncos.